Welcome back. Now in this video we are going to learn how to type down some caption for our figure and also how to label the figure. So here when we have the figure included, we have one part that is caption. So this part is going to keep the figure in the center, and then this part is going to include the JPG file that we uploaded. This file is the caption file that is here. So it says figure 1 caption. I would say, for example, I would say the description of the lecture. So this is now the caption. So figure 1 is the description of the lecture. So the name and the caption of this figure is this one. And it is going to include the figure 1 itself. So it is going to count it itself. So if you have two figures, it is going to label the first one to be the figure 1 and then figure 2, etc. And if you move one figure from the down of the page to an earlier page, for example, it is going to order the figures at each recompile itself automatically, so you're safe. But in order to make sure that you're referring to the correct figure every time in the text, you need to have labels. So I would say this is 2 and this is 1, and we have here. So here we have the labeling. In order to cite this figure in the text while describing this figure, we need to have labels, because otherwise, since the figure numbers are automatic, otherwise when the LaTeX is doing everything automatically itself, and it is positioning figures one a priori to the others, or when you are making moves, you don't need to change the label in the text manually. For example, if I want to talk about this first page and not this second one in the text, in this section we provide a figure that discusses the lecture of today. Figure, and in order to cite this figure, so let me put this one, figure 1, for example, and the label of the second one is lecture 2, for example, and the first one is lecture 1. Lecture 1. So let me just recompile. So we have two figures. This is lecture 1 and this is lecture 2. So if I'm going to cite this lecture 1 in the text, I would have to simply type down backslash and type down ref, and then you can simply choose among the labels that you already defined here. So I'm talking about the first one, so I'm going to choose the first one. So I'm going to say figure, for example, that is referring to ref lecture 1, which means figure 1 here, is describing blah blah blah, while figure and ref tab, and this time I'm going to choose this one because I'm going to talk about the second figure, describes blah blah blah, for example. So when I recompile, you see that when I have the label of the first figure in the compiled version, now it directly says figure 1 is describing. So I was having figure label lecture 1 is describing, while figure label 2, which was referring to this one, describes. So now that this one is figure 1 and this one is figure 2, if I cut this part here and I put it here, we will see that things will change. Why? Because now lecture 2 became figure 1, and we are having lecture 1 to be figure 2. However, in the text now, because it is doing the labeling and numbering the figures automatically, it says that figure 2 is describing blah blah blah, which is the lecture one, while figure one describes, which is something else. So here what I meant was that because the numbering of the figures are automatic, so you need to use the labeling system in order to make sure that you're having the correct figure being cited in the text. So when I put the figure, this lecture 2 after lecture 1, again here it becomes figure 1 is describing while figure 2 describes, etc. Basically, using this citing method in the text, just cite the labels and describe the figures and don't care about anything else, because in the later on while writing the paper, if you're changing the places of the figures, you don't need to modify the text anymore because the text is already referring to the correct label. Therefore, when you recompile, LaTeX is going to correct everything automatically, the numbering, the label, the figures, for example, labels and tables, etc. Thank you for watching.